Hi, this is a fairly unscripted video. It looks more like a podcast, so you don't have to look at my face all along. If you want to do something else next to it, it's fine. But the topic is really important, and until I get the time to make a fuller, more complex videos about this topic, I would really like to discuss them and at least open the conversation with you. So this is fairly unscripted. And it stems from two stories that basically merge into one regarding artistic practice, but I would say practice of any skills in general. And the first one is one that happened to me about 20 years ago in art school, higher education art school. I will not right now mention this one. Some of my schoolmates remember it. So we were in sculpture department, and one of our tasks was to sculpt a tree. We had no given instructions. We were just being told to build a tree out of clay. And so everyone started to make their own tree. Or maybe one was going like this. Maybe one said, okay, tree has branches and a trunk. And we had this teacher who would walk around with a very smug face and a gigantic hammer. And so he was walking slowly, checking behind our necks. And every now and then he would look at the piece and he would say, wrong, and bah! Just smash the piece with a hammer. This was clay, so it would deform the clay up until it's just a cartoon character, completely flattened like this. And people were like, what just happened? And he would continue like this. So the whole lesson was a couple of hours of just traumatizing first-year students in art university. And there was not a lot to gain except making the teacher feel very superior to us. And the lesson he wanted to tell us at the end was something in the lines of, well, the difficulty, because there was a reason why he hammered most of the pieces, if not all of them. And that's another, the right tree, the correct tree in his mind is something for a different video. But the point is, he wanted us to learn to use or to make our own hammer. He said, sometimes you have to learn to see that this is wrong, and we have to teach you how to teach yourselves. So I would not bother with this story because I don't really like trauma as a form of education. But I wanted to introduce this topic because here we had an actual decent point that he was trying to make, which was you have to learn how to practice and to be critical of the work itself. And then I want to talk about bad education, which means that we have learned through just humiliation, basically. And yeah, it's not a great way to make people feel bad, especially about something that can be so personal, like artistic practice. It's very close to the heart, especially in the beginning when we are maybe first-year students. People were crying in that classroom, and well, this is 20 years ago, but the crying was almost part of the appeal for the teacher, so not great. Now, speaking of education, when I teach children, I teach drawing and painting and all sort of art at different years. And when they're about 4 years old, they're still having a blast. Whatever happens, they are just touching, they're practicing, they're doing stuff. And it's a line and they're happy, and it's colors and then they're happy. But somewhere around 6, 7, 8 years old, there is the children recognize that, for example, their work is not as good or as rendered or as realistic than someone older might do. They become very self-conscious about their skills, and they don't just see the pleasure of doing. And this can lead to some extremes where I have children crying in the classroom after 5 minutes, and I ask them, what's going on? I don't know how to draw this. And I'm like, well, this is a classroom. You're here to try. No, I can't try it. I don't know how to do it. And I would have to say, um, like, okay, look what your neighbor is doing. There's a, if it, where you have to draw a cat, for example, there were cat example. I bring cats on the paper, photos of cats, drawings of cats, a little bit of tutorial of cats, and I say, okay, look, there's a round stuff, and there's a, maybe it's a pentagon for the face, and we can put ears. And they're like, no, I don't know how to do it. It doesn't look good, and I tried. And usually when they say I tried, it means they tried once, and they scribbled it angrily. I had one kid also who would throw away the paper after one line. So usually what happens with one line, if they are in good mood, they will at least ask for the eraser. Oh, my line is wrong, one line on a blank page. But sometimes they will just angrily rub the whole paper, and it's incredible. I tell them, I have to teach them about basic respect of material, but also that there's not much to be gained from first being so angry at yourself, and second about one line. Basically, what I'm trying to say is there is a huge gap between learning in general, and especially, children are in a learning environment most of the time. They're at school, and they are learning how to write through repetition. They had to go through all the process. I know I have kids in primary school, and they had to learn A, B, C's by just repeating A, B, 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 until they got the hang of it. But for some reason, drawing you have to make a beautiful drawing right on the spot, or no, that's it, garbage. And I have to ask them sometimes, do you play music instrument? And like, yeah, I have piano on Tuesdays. And what do you do in piano? Well, we have to repeat this thing. So we don't just start doing Chopin and say, okay, play that Chopin piece, and if you can't do it as well as people from the Vienna Philharmonic, well, it's not worth trying. And they understand this. They say, yes, I know that I have to practice writing, I know that I have to practice piano, but for some reason, drawing, they cannot practice. They cannot fathom the idea that you will make one bad drawing, and a second bad drawing, and it's fine, and a third bad drawing, and you just like build on those. But if you don't make a drawing to begin with, it's not going to work out. And I wondered what's this discrepancy, which led me to realize that when you practice or when you mess up a drawing, you have trace of it, you have a proof, it's in front of you. And for many people, it's taunting. It's taunting you, saying, look, I still exist, I'm a drawing, and you messed up, or I'm a line, and it's not the line you wanted to do, and you have something in your head and something in front of you, and what's in front of you is almost insulting you, saying, oh, look, it's not as good. But when you play a music instrument, there is no trace of it, unless you're actually recording that session, which I highly doubt you're recording every single piano lesson that you're taking, or guitar, or any other instrument. For some reason, I mean, that for me is the biggest difference. So I can repeat the same bar of piano for 1 hour, and every time the last one will be the one that informs me whether I improve or not. But all the other ones are lost in the sands of time. That's it, they are gone. But if I did 30 drawings, I still have my 30 drawings in front of me. And so what do I do with them? Are they masterpiece? Are they insulting garbage? So it led me to realize that the minute we are aware of it, the minute we can start, I would say, relaxing in regards to those bad drawings, because they are not good and bad, of course, that's another topic entirely. But basically, we can either decide to keep them and say, okay, we are checking our progress. Or you could keep only the best one and then measure the best one with the one from next month, the best one from next month, and the best one from next month. And then just discard all the less successful ones. That's up to you. That's a little bit what I'm doing. I'm usually skimming past through or like hundreds of, let's say, live drawing. And I will not trash all of them, but I will trash most of them, so that I still have a feel with the best ones of how I improved. But I also I don't want to weight myself with like endless piles of drawings that, again, they're not bad, because if the aim of the drawing is to practice, then being good or bad doesn't matter. They are not bad, they are just practice. And so either I practice something and then I figure it out in the next drawing and it's fine. Why should I keep something when piano players didn't bother like keeping the recordings of every single practice session they're doing? And so that led me to think of practicing drawing in a way closer to practicing music, again, where you can separate the moment where you're on stage doing a performance to the moment where you're in a studio actually recording music, to all those moments which probably makes 99% of the life of an artist, which is just at home practicing or doing something for the pleasure of it. If I'm drawing something for a client, I will force myself to, of course, make the best of it. So I have plenty of practice of intent. We'll talk about intent right away. Basically, the final piece has been rehearsed very much so. I don't just throw the first thing at them and hope for the best. The same way someone who will have a piano recital doesn't just show up and then mess up and then gets angry. They will just rehearse a lot, and it doesn't matter whether this rehearsal exists or doesn't exist anymore. So that leads me to the second point about practice, which is when you practice, I don't like the term practice makes perfect, for example. I think practice with intent makes perfect, or just makes you a better artist at what you're doing. So an intent is either you can formulate it through a question or just a statement. For example, I say, okay, let's say today you want to draw flowers. You see beautiful flowers in your backyard or in the garden or just outside. And the practice would say, I like this flower, I want to draw it. But that's not an intent. The intent would be either through a question, for example, what did I like on this flower? Is it different size of petal in contrast to the way, I don't know, the stem is going? Is it the color? Do I want to practice the color? So then the intent would be, if I say I like the colors of this flower, then the statement would be, or the intent, well, I want to see what's going on with these colors. Usually a color, a pleasing color situation has to do with color temperature, for example. There might be a very red petal, and then maybe the petal, when it's like sided towards the sky, is a bit cooler, so we would have like a more pink or a purple side, and then the other side might be orange, but you don't know it yet. So if the first, I would say, thing that the first feeling that you get, the first intuition is, I like the colors of this flower. That's a very good first intuition. But then you bring it to consciousness, and then you're thinking, why do I like it? And if you say, I don't know, then let's find out. Then I will really study the color of this flower. Or you would say, I really like the form of the petals. Again, what do you like about it? And then you can start thinking, well, they're very large, and then maybe they end into a point. Monstera would be a typical example. It's a very beautiful plant. And then we can start thinking, why do we like them? What's with this enormous shape, and then seems to be like cut in an interesting way inside? It has all, like most, I mean, like every plant, it has a lot to do with the way they grow and how they receive chemicals at some point. And then there's a book about patterns we need to talk about. Philip Ball has a book about patterns. Highly recommended to learn why many things look the way they are, but also about plants, how plants develop. Sorry, little sidetracking. The point is, try to reformulate your first intuition or perception or appreciation into something that you can practice or that you can really focus on. If you don't do that, it's fine if you don't do that. You can just say, I will draw this flower because I like the flower. But it's not a consequence. I make it sound more dramatic than it is. But basically, it might end up more like doodling or like doing something, just repeating the same chops that you've been doing all the time. And over the course of time, if you don't learn to narrow down your practice, you might feel that you're not improving. For example, why does my drawing from 6 months ago look the same as the one from 6 years ago? Why am I not improving? And I would say most of the time it boils down to, well, how do you approach your sketching? Do you just come and see, oh, what happens? I'll sketch whatever, which means you don't really, you might not be conscious of the way you draw, for example, or even the mindset you approach it. It has nothing to do with what you're drawing. I can say that now, and I will say it forever. Whether you're drawing people in a cafe or a cathedral, or I was taking the example of a flower. It can be anything. It doesn't matter. It's what you do with this first intuition, what you liked or wanted to show. So yeah, set an intent when you want to practice, and that will help you. The other thing is, I would recommend when you set an intent to kind of stick to it. If you say, okay, I really like petals, to continue with my flowers, I really like the petals of this flower, then you could check different flowers and say, okay, what's different with those flowers? What happens when I draw this flower? Can I have a shortcut to draw this flower if I had to draw it in like 1 millimeter? What would it look like? You can simplify the language, your shape language, and you develop different qualities. Like, okay, this flower is always like that, almost always. This flower is more like little triangles. I'm not saying to move into design. You don't turn triangles or force flowers into this form system. But you would say, okay, most of the time this flower has as a base a triangle, and then you can always ask yourself why this flower works like this and like that. These are always good questions. Be curious about that. And please do not stop practicing on a bad note, on a sour moment where you're like, oh, I'm so stuck and I hate it. If you start, for example, with a new technique, let's say you want to try ink, or to draw everything with ink instead of pencil to be more decisive with your lines, great. But don't give up on ink after 1 week thinking, oh, it's too difficult. I would say try to stick until you have your first breakthrough, your first aha moment, like, whoa, now it works. For 2 reasons. And then you can at that point ask yourself, okay, do I want to continue with ink or try something else, or just go back to what I'm more comfortable with? The 2 reasons why you shouldn't stop on a obstacle. The first one, of course, it feels better to have basically to reinforce the positiveness. If you feel good trying something new, you will probably bring this positive experience to the next one. The other one is, it's really encouraging to learn to stick to something, to finish, to have an obstacle. You will never finish as in, oh, that's it, I won. I am the best ink master in the whole universe, and that's it. I can just stop here because, Hiroshige got nothing on me, Rembrandt got nothing on me. I'm just the master of ink on this whole planet for the rest of eternity. That's not how art works. I'm pretty sure you know that. So I'm not saying you have to master 80 years of practice and then stick to something else. It's more like these little steps. Improvement doesn't go, it's not linear. It's far from linear. There's plateau, there's steep hills and so on. And those little moments, once you reach the plateau, like on a hike, then you're on that flat surface. You can rest, you can admire the landscape. You're like, whoa, you can see how much steps you took to get there. And then you can think, okay, maybe I'm done here. Maybe I'm done on this plateau. I'll have my snack, my little victory dance, and then go home. Or you think, okay, what's the next step? Because the next step looks steeper again. And it's the same with practice. I would say, yeah, you can stick like 5-6 weeks on one material, for example. It can be oil pastel, it can be ink, it can be just pencil drawing because you want to get, let's say you want to fix your proportion in live drawing. So you're like, okay, forget ink, forget all this fancy stuff. I need my proportions right. Okay, cool. But don't go back then until you haven't figured what was wrong with the proportion. I would say figure it out, and then when you answer this question, this intent, then you're like, okay, whoa, I didn't learn something, I'm feeling better now. Now you can think, okay, maybe I did enjoy the ink more, but you will bring this that you have learned plus the joy of having improved clearly, and then you move it back to ink, and then you can say, okay, maybe I prefer ink. Those are examples, but please translate them or turn them the way you want for yourself. Just, yeah, that's my 2 cents about how you can improve your practice. And the last thing, to go back to children crying. And when I say children crying, I can tell from experience in live drawing that adults are not always crying, but you can see them sometimes really, they are very tough to themselves. You can see they are like freaking out, like, oh, this is not good, this is not right. And you have to remind them that this is fine, this is a drawing. The worst that can happen in failing a drawing is that you have a bad drawing. That's the worst, that's the literal bottom. Oh, I have a paper and in it, it's not my best drawing. Wow, that was worth, sweating over it. Children are not neutral with their drawings. They're very close to it. They're very emotional. Some of them come to me and every 5 minutes they say, teacher, is it beautiful? Is it right? Is it good? And in general, my general response is always yes. Yes, it's good. Yes, it's beautiful. Because there's no point in me saying, there's no reason for me to say anything else than yes, it's beautiful, because it is beautiful. And what's beautiful is that they are drawing, they are painting, they are trying, they're practicing, and they're learning to enjoy new materials or familiar materials the same way. But those who are crying, it's very difficult to approach them, because I can tell them, like, look, we can take another paper and we can try again. And they're like, no, because the drawing has failed, I have failed, and I am a terrible person or terrible artist. And this is very difficult for me to get them out of it. Like, maybe we can try with a different color. Maybe we can try a different subject. Maybe you want to do something else, like 5 minutes. And they're like, no, I am absolutely done. When you grow up, you try to detach yourself from most of the things. We learn to be analytical, calm. We kind of detach ourselves from our emotions. And so with drawing, I can see the child in most people, including myself. I can see the child who wants to react and say, no, this is terrible. But I can see the grown-up holding it up like, I am trying, I am practicing. But I know some of them, they would leave after 1 hour and they're like, I have to go home. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, I just can't. And they're holding up and they have to leave the space. They have to go home and maybe go home, like get mad saying, oh my God, this has messed so much. I didn't get it. When you practice, the best I can tell you is to stay neutral in regards to your drawing. You look at the drawing as something external to you and something to reflect on. You look at the image and you're like, okay, did it answer the question that I set myself? If I wanted to study to focus on proportions, well, is my drawing proportional? Yes, no. So it's not worthy of getting mad, throwing the paper, or screaming. Sometimes we want to, because if the 10th drawing or the 100th drawing is messed up, we get very emotional, and fair enough. Then it's better to take a break and do something else. I'm not saying to stick to it. I'm trying to say to keep a critical distance. But yeah, those are big topics, and I will definitely go back to it. I don't want to hold your time too much. I wanted to definitely open the discussion, because if you're interested in that, I will go back to it and maybe offer more practical solutions. Yeah, that's the gist of what I wanted to say. So we'll talk about practice further down the line. If there's anything you should remember from this, thank you very much if you made it that far. Try to stay neutral with your practice. Try to formulate a question before. If you just want to doodle, it's fine, doodling. But doodling is not practice. Doodling is just, it's like letting your line, just go for a familiar walk in a familiar spot. But if you're trying to practice, then you need to have a question. And it can be as simple as, what do I like in here? Or do I like the shape? Or just have a conscious effort from your part, and look at the drawing in relationship to this question and nowhere else. Does it satisfy the question that I set myself, or the goal I set myself for? If no, continue. If yes, great. And that's it. That's the extent of it. And to go back to the hammer, if you're a teacher, if you're an educator, if you're a parent, of course, do not crush other people's work. It's not nice. It will only lead to negative consequences in their lives. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Please comment if anything comes to mind regarding to this topic, because I will definitely go back to it. So see you. I'm gonna finish my coffee, and yeah, talk to you next time.